Hello all, welcome back. So today we are starting our second module, permanent way. So in this module we will be focusing more on the permanent way that we are designing to the smooth movement of our railway engines and the railway wagons. So let's have a look at what are the main components of this permanent way and how it ensures the smooth movement of the train through that. So let's move on to the module permanent way. In this module we will be focusing mainly on the permanent ways, its components and their functions. We already discussed these topics in the first module and we know that what are the components of a permanent way. In this module we will be focusing more into the details of those components, mainly the rails, and in the rails we will discuss about the types of rails, rail fastenings, concept of gauges, coning of wheels, grips and kinks. Then we will move on to the sleepers, the functions, materials used for as the sleepers, and the density. Then we will discuss a new topic, bellas, less tracks. Then we will move on to the geometric design of railway track, the design of horizontal curves, radius, super elevation current efficiency and the transition curves, its gradients and the different types. And towards the last we will discuss about the concept of compensation of gradients. So in this module we will be discussing in detail of two main components of the permanent way, the rails and the sleepers. So in this lecture 1 of module 2 we will be discussing, or we will be more focusing on the rails, and this will be a short lesson and we will be having 7 lessons to complete this module, because this module is very important as far as the exams are concerned. And also if you are going to work as a railway engineer, these concepts must be there in your mind. So we are not in a rush in this module, so we will be covering this in a slow pace, and there will be 7 lectures in this series. So in this lesson we will be discussing on the types of rails. We all know that there are 3 types of rails used in the construction of permanent way. The first one is double-headed rails, the second one is bull-headed rails, and the last one and most commonly used one is the flat-footed rails. So in this slide you can see 3 main figures showing the details of these 3 rails. The first picture is the picture of double-headed rails. So we will look at the details in the following slides. So I'm not going to discuss the details about these rails in this. So we will be discussing the details in the following slides. And this is a flat-footed rail and this is a bull-headed rail. So the first one is a double-headed rails, or it is commonly known as D.H Rails among the railway persons. It indicates the first stage development. So during the first stage development of our Indian railways or the world rail networks, they used these types of rails. And histories show that in the good olden days they used even timber rails. So we all know that the timber is not everlasting and it cannot withstand more stresses. So later the timber was replaced by steel, wrought iron, etc. So the double-headed rails are the first metallic rails that used. It has mainly 3 parts: the upper table, web and the lower table. The main peculiarity of the D.H rails are the double-headed with dumbbell section. They are made of wrought iron. The speciality of this rail is the upper and lower tables are identical. And the advantage of using this type of D.H rails is when the upper rail is worn out, the rails can be inverted and reused. And this was widely accepted. This assumption was widely accepted in the olden days, but later they realized that this won't work but long contact with chairs made the surface of lower table very rough. So smooth running of train became impossible. So due to that disadvantage, the D.H rails were replaced by the bull-headed rails. So this is a detail of the D.H rails, the dimensions of D.H rails. The upper table's depth is 44 mm and the lower table depth is 44 mm and the table width is 70 mm for both upper and lower tables. The overall depth of the section is 152 mm and the web depth is 64 mm and the web thickness is 19 mm. So you must remember these dimensions. The university may ask to draw this figure, this cross section, and give the details. So you must be familiar with these figures. The next development in the rails is the bull-headed rails, otherwise commonly known as B.H rails. It also has three parts: head, web, and foot. And we already discussed these parts in the first module. The main parts of the rails are web, head, and foot. The double-headed rails are made of wrought irons, but the bull-headed rails are made of steel, which means it have more strength than wrought irons rails. The head is made thicker and stronger than the foot. This is a main difference between the DH and BH rails. So more material distribution is there on the head. The main advantage of BH rails are, even after wear, bull head can withstand stresses. But the fastening of these rails are a bit complicated. They used chairs and keys to fix these rails with the sleepers, and we will look at the details in the next slide. So these are the three figures that related to BH rails, and you can see the chair and key arrangement used to fix the rails over the sleepers. The dimensions are very important. The top width is 68.66 mm and the bottom width is 64 mm. The overall depth of the section is 145 mm. The head depth is 46 mm and the foot depth is 33 mm. The depth of the web is 64 mm and the thickness of the web is 16.27 mm. So you have to remember these points in this slide. The rails are fixed with the sleepers with the help of chair and key arrangement. So this is very unique feature of this BH rails. Neither it is used in DH rails nor in flat-footed rails. So this arrangement made these rails a bit complicated. So that's why this was replaced by flat-footed rails. So you must remember these dimensions of this rail. University can ask you to draw the figure and label the parts. So at that time you must know the values of each width and depth of the sections. So let's move on to the next type of rail, that is flat-footed rails or FF rails. It's commonly known as Wignall's rails. The peculiar feature of this rail is the foot is spread out to form a base. So that feature makes it a chair and key free rail. So we do not need of chairs and keys to fix these rails to the sleepers. Foot of the rail is directly fixed to the sleepers. So that eliminated the chair and key arrangement and made that fixture economical. The main peculiar feature of this rail is it has more strength and stiffness than the other two rails. So it is strong in both the vertical and lateral directions. It is cheaper than D.H Rails. Why it is cheaper? It eliminated the chair and key arrangement. So we can fix these rails directly to the sleepers. So that made this section economical. It is widely used in India. In our country, we are using this type of rails nowadays. So we can look at the details of the dimensions of this FF rails. It has 3 parts: head, web and foot, and the foot is widened than the head. And the dimensions are: the top width or the head width is 66.68 mm, and the depth of the head is 43.66 mm. We know that there should be enough width or enough depth for the head portion in order to ensure the smooth movement of the train, right? We discussed these points already in the first module. The web thickness is small compared to the BH and DH. Here it is 13.89 mm, and the overall depth of the section is 142.88 mm. The slope of the foot is 1:6, and the depth of the foot is 20.64 mm, and the width of the foot is 136.53 mm. So you must know these dimensions. So that's all in this lecture. Hope all got an idea about the different types of rails that we are using, that we are used in the past and used in this current scenario. So you must know the dimensions, you must know the figures, and you must know the differences between the DH, BH and FF rails. So in next lecture we will be discussing about the gauges that we are using for the construction of railway tracks. So see you in the next lecture. Thank you.